What time of day do you find yourself grocery shopping most often?
That's a good question. I want to say for us, it's usually in the morning. We often order groceries for pickup.
Okay.
And so, I like order them the night before and pick them up at the early slot is what we tend to do. And if we
Okay.
don't do that, it's like more like 5 or 6 at night.
Sure. I've been trying to shop as late as possible recently,
Okay.
where I will go to the grocery store Saturday at 10:15
Wow.
p.m. And my Kroger usually closes at 11, so there's just enough time for me to just zip in through. Almost nobody is
Yeah,
there.
a lot less people.
Yes, exactly. There's no crowds. I can park a lot closer, and it's just a lot more stress-free for me to do it that way, other than trying to get out of the store before it closes. So obviously, I'm just trying to get around the busy times where I feel like 5 p.m. is a pretty hectic time. Yeah, like mid-morning, obviously.
Yeah, every time I go at that time, I think, I don't know why we came to the store right now. It's always very hard to get around at 6 o'clock. You know what I mean? It's a bad time.
Absolutely. So over the past month, though, in addition to my evening grocery shopping, I've learned that grocery stores in Spain have been so packed, but only between 7 and 8 p.m. And the people aren't there for the produce or the deli counter. They're here for love.
Love.
Yes, because the newest dating craze in Spain is not on an app, but it's going to the grocery store chain called Mercadona. And how do you know the people in the store are trying to date or not? Like, how do you know if you're on the market while you are in the market? You place an upside down pineapple in your shopping cart, which in America means a much different thing.
Yeah.
So do not try this in America. You will get a different kind of person interested in you at the grocery store. So, but in Spain though, like you put your upside down pineapple in the shopping cart and you start shopping around and you're going around the store. And eventually you need to head to the wine section and you are looking for other people who have the pineapple as well. And if you find someone who you think is attractive who also has a pineapple, you need to ram your shopping cart into their cart. Yes, and that is how you match.
Wow.
And then at that point, I guess you would talk to them, maybe see if you like each other and maybe set up a time to go hang out and go on a date. That's the part I haven't seen a lot of. I've watched a lot of videos online of like people trying to do this. I haven't seen anybody go that far with it yet, but I'm sure it had to have happened at some point. But what if that's too limiting? What if you need to express yourself more than just, I'm interested in dating somebody? Well, there are other items you can add to your cart to supplement the pineapple to let people know specifically what you're looking for. So if you're looking for something very short term, like a fling, you need to put a head of lettuce in your cart because the lettuce will go bad in a couple of days.
Okay.
But if you're looking for long term, you're looking for your soulmate, you want to make sure that you have boxes of lentils in your cart because lentils last forever
It's a pantry
in the
food.
pantry. Exactly.
Wow.
And there are a lot of Mercadonas in Spain. This is a pretty large chain, apparently. But there are enough people out there that are doing this that they've had to call the police for crowd control reasons. And the videos I'm seeing, like, it is very busy, like shoulder to shoulder. It's in certain areas, people walking, ramming shopping carts and trying to get through.
Amazing.
It's like the teen hangout now.
How did the word get around?
There was a local actress who like had some amount of like local popularity. She made a TikTok video about this and said, "Hey, here's the new thing. Start doing it."
I would say it feels like an internet thing,
And
I think what's endearing about it is that it's an internet thing, but it's completely not an internet thing when you're doing it. You know what I mean? That's cool.
Yes, for sure. And I think she may have even wrote a song. I think she wrote a song to go with it and mentioned something about like being in the wine section with the pineapple or something. So it's been, yes, it is a cross media campaign by this lady who just thought it would be funny, I guess. So I'm sure this trend, will die out at some point, just like most trends do. But I hope that we get at least one marriage that resulted from two shopping carts colliding at 7 p.m. in the wine aisle at a Mercadona.
Welcome to the Factoid Podcast. You did not ask for it, but we're going to tell you about it anyway. My name's Chris Humphreys.
And I'm Payton Gessel.
Sometimes life is unfair. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You know how throughout like the course of life and society, things change, right? We all
Yeah.
know this. We all see this. We live this. Sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's for the worse. But through time, stuff changes. That's just how it is. I got to spend some time with Kirsten's grandma recently. She's 99 years old. It's really interesting to hear about the amount of changes that she has lived through. It's crazy, actually, like to be able to talk to her about some of that. I know we're past the Olympics now, but there's some of this kind of evidence in the Olympics. And I'm not a sports fan, really. You know this about me. I do enjoy the Olympics. A lot of people do, maybe who aren't quite normal sports fans. But I think about this one quite often. I always liked watching swimming in the Olympics. And I think really, if I think about it, I liked watching swimming because the year that I recall really liking watching swimming, there was lots of really great American swimmers in the Olympics. You know what I mean? So you're excited to see your country perform well, right? The media gets you excited. The people you talk to get you excited. We're all marking our calendars for the day that swim happens, right? And for me, that was in 2008 at the Olympics. And Michael Phelps was at these Olympics, and he was at many more than that. But I remember him being there. And in fact, by the time it was all said and done, I think in 2008, Michael Phelps won like 8 gold medals.
Which is crazy.
It's insane. It's insane because like it's pretty much every event he was in, I think he won gold. But here's the thing. As I said, time progresses, things change. Technology is something that changes. And that's true even with swimsuits, right? And this is the year, I don't know if you remember this or not, or this is the year when everyone who swam was allowed to, they started wearing like neck to ankle, full body swimsuits, right?
Okay.
And this is like, that's not normal. That's not how they always do it. And they don't do it that way anymore, but it's because it turns out with the technology of like what they're making it out of, this makes you more aerodynamic. That's probably not the word when you're in the water.
Aquadynamic?
It makes it easier for you to speed through the water, right?
Right.
And so you could swim exactly the same way in, a normal swimsuit, a Speedo and swim trunks, and you would be slower than if you were swimming in one of these swimsuits that everyone in the Olympics wore, right?
Wow.
So what was interesting is like this year, pretty much every event had the world record broken. Like every single swim basically was a world record swim. And it's because of the technology that changed, giving people the ability to wear these swimsuits, right?
Man.
Like I'm sure world records get broken all the time, right? That happens. Right. But like it doesn't happen quite like that, right? And it was like by multiple seconds sometimes, like crazy numbers, right? Wow. And it's because of these swimsuits. So if everyone swam exactly the same as they had swam the last Olympics, they would still break the record because this technology had gotten so much better. It was really honestly fascinating to watch. I think maybe that's why I like watching swimming in the Olympics, is because every time you would watch the person you were looking for, like the person who was, the favorite would often win, and they would every time break a world record this year. And I remember like cheering, and it was great. It was super fun to watch that year. It was like record after record. It was super exciting. And honestly, I haven't seen one quite as exciting since then. And like I said, I don't really care about sports. As a teenager, I still didn't care about sports, but I loved watching every minute of that. But here's the thing. As soon as that year ended, as soon as that happened, everyone kind of realized this might be an unfair advantage, okay? And so you're not allowed to wear those anymore. They stopped using that because every record got broken, and they realized every record from the past is now kind of seeming obsolete, and then every record in the future seems not as good because there's this one year where everyone was doing good. It's like, what was happening, right?
Right.
And so you're not allowed to. And in fact, I think those records even maybe have like an asterisk next to them now or whatever. But it's like, that was fair at the time. You know what I mean? It's like, that was fair. But like, now the fastest times ever swam were like in an unfair way. No one's ever going to catch up to that because there's just, unless they change the rules again someday. Sometimes things just aren't fair. It's fair when it's allowed, but it's not when it's not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Vice versa, whatever, right? It's also like, not to get like weird or whatever, but like think about like marijuana did not used to be legal, and you could go to prison for all these years just for having it.
Sure.
And then like they decided one time, and it's still in different states, like, oh, you're allowed to have it. So now there's people in those states that are in prison for X amount of years for having it.
But now it's legal.
Yeah, so it's like now, you wouldn't go to prison. So it's unfair for them because they're in prison, but, but it's fair for the people because that's how it is now, right? Things change. Things are unfair. This is true. Well, something both interesting and unfair happened another time in another sport. And I know you're like, why are you talking about sports? You know what I'm saying? It happens, right? I don't necessarily love sports, but I really like hearing about things that happen, and sometimes they just happen in sports. And on December 12th, 1982, in Foxborough, Massachusetts, there were very, very heavy rains. And in December in Massachusetts, it gets cold overnight. These rains, they covered and they soaked the AstroTurf in Schaefer Stadium. That was the home to the Patriots, the NFL team, the Patriots, New England Patriots. This is nothing out of the ordinary. It rains there all the time. Rain is rain, right? Nothing crazy. But what made it worse is this night, it got cold, very cold. And everything froze over. Also not that rare when you're talking about the East Coast, right? This is something that happens.
Sure.
But that's not all, because during the game, there was a huge snowstorm. It hit near the beginning of the game, and because the ground was so cold and there was frozen layers, the snow just piled and piled up. And so during the game, all of the officials, everyone came together and they made an emergency rule where the officials could stop the game, stop play, suspend play, so that they could have the field like plowed, so they could see, mostly so they could see like ball markers and stuff, right?
Right.
But it snowed so hard that they couldn't keep up. They couldn't even keep up with doing that. It was just snowing and snowing and snowing. And the game went on and on. Nobody scored. Nobody could score. They couldn't hold on to the ball. They couldn't stand up. Like, it was a crazy game. It's not an important game, right? It's just a random season game. But like, this game just goes on and on. It probably was entertaining to watch. Probably actually terrible to be there, because who wants to sit out in freezing cold snow all day? This just went on the whole night. But then in the fourth quarter, with about 5 minutes left in the game, the Patriots got to field goal position. Okay, and this is an exciting time. And the coach of the Patriots just kind of went over casually to the guy who operated the snowplow and just said, "Hey, can you clear a spot for the kicker? Can you just clear it so he's got a clean space to kick in?" He didn't argue. He did. He went out. They made the kick and they go up 3-0. Well, they're playing the Dolphins, right? And the Dolphins, right after this, said, "Hey, they asked the refs, can we get the field plowed for our kicker for the kickoff, right? For the kick and for the run. We want to hopefully make a run that gets us into field goal position, right?" And it was denied. The ref said, "No, we can't do that." I'm like, okay. The coach of the Dolphins made the snowplow operator follow behind them the whole way so that when they got into field goal position, the refs would stop the game and clear the field, just as happened for the Patriots.
Right.
And so they finally get to field goal position very near the end of the game, and they're waiting for the refs to make the call, to call the timeout, to ask the snowplow operator to just plow the field for them. And they didn't do it. They didn't clear it. And they missed the kick.
Oh, man.
And
that snowplow, by the way, sounded kind of like me playing high school football, of standing behind the coach, hoping that maybe he would notice me and put me in without saying, "Put me in, coach." So I'm imagining the snowplow just hovering behind the Dolphins coach that whole time, like, "Do I get to plow? Please.
Let me do it. Let me do it." And that's probably what he was thinking. I know that's what the team was thinking. Like, you've done this for them. What are we going to do, right? Well, they didn't make it, and they missed. And is it because of the snow? I don't know. I don't really know. But through the course of many other sports things that happened after that play, like a Hail Mary and a punt and all these things, the Dolphins ended up losing the game 0-3. They weren't able to score. They weren't able to make this work. And it's interesting because the refs are supposed to be the people who make the decision about plowing the field, right? And the coach just kind of asked the snowplow operator, and he just said, "Yeah," because honestly, if you're a snowplow operator for the NFL and someone asks you to plow the field, you probably just do it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I'm assuming this guy's like above my pay grade. Who asks me? I'm just gonna go.
Right.
Fun fact about the guy is his name's Mark Henderson, and he was actually a convicted felon who was still serving time in the prison, but somehow got on pre-release for like a work release, and like he somehow secured this crazy job, which is insane, right? So like this guy's like out. I mean, this is probably like the time of his life. He don't care what. Like, this is like, I don't got to go back. I can just hang out in the NFL here, right? Like, I'm on TV right now.
Wow, that is crazy.
I know. Somehow he got a job driving big machinery on a field in the NFL
with like rich people.
Yes, crazy, right? But like, yeah, it's supposed to be the refs thing, but obviously the coach just asked him and it worked. So my guess is if the Dolphins coach asked him, he probably would have done the same thing. I don't necessarily think it was a weird conspiracy theory or anything.
Right.
But here's the thing. Snowplows aren't allowed in the NFL at all anymore. They just kind of cut that out, right?
Yeah, I've never seen one.
Yeah, they don't do that anymore. And it literally stems from this game because they realized, that could be unfair, I guess, or whatever. I don't know why you wouldn't just make some rules instead of that, right? Because I'm assuming this happens to this day where there's bad weather and they need it, but maybe they just cancel games now? I don't know.
One of the things they did last year for the Buffalo Bills is that they hired all the fans to show up the night before.
Really?
So they said, all right, like, we will pay you X amount of dollars, we'll give you a meal, but you need to show up at 2 a.m. and like
Wow.
shovel this entire
Okay.
stadium and the field so that we can play tomorrow.
But that's one of those things, though, like, as a fan, you're probably like, I'm going to go shovel. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And all of the teams, it seems like all of the teams in the North are the ones that have the more like loyal, rabid fan bases. So like the Packers have done this before too, where those kind of there's that community that is crazy enough that they will send several hundred people out there and do it in a couple hours.
And it's literally because in the 80s, there was a weird controversy with a snowplow thing, and apparently the person in charge didn't want to deal with it and just said, no more snowplows. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's unfair, right? And I'm thinking, like, as I'm thinking about telling this story, as I'm thinking about sharing this with you, I'm thinking, how can I end this in an inspirational way? How can I make a good spin on this? I've been trying to figure that out, and the best I could come up with is this. Life's unfair. Suck it up.
One of the fun things about my recent vacation that Amy and I took in Europe was that we got to try all of the local cuisine. And I am happy to announce that one of those local delicacies was horse meat.
No, yeah, that's great.
Yes, I was able to go to a restaurant in Geneva, Switzerland, and this was like a real dive. This was a kind of grimy diner. Only locals are there. I had to wait an hour just to get in.
No way.
Like an hour wait. And this happened twice. Like I had to come back the next day because it was so busy because everybody was just eating horses up in there and there wasn't space
Were
for
they
me.
all eating horse?
A lot of the menu is horse. So they have steak, they have like I guess they have a good like chicken cordon bleu, I think too. So it wasn't all that, but like I saw other people in the restaurant eating it. And I mean, they're known for it enough that they had a horse special that day. So I got the entrecôte de cheval in a mushroom sauce with a side of fries. And I will say the flavor was not as good as a beefsteak. I had a beef steak the day before that was significantly better. It was twice as expensive.
Right.
I would say there was a slightly weird flavor at the beginning of eating it. And then it just kind of turned into normal beef.
Right.
But it's a little dry just because there's not as much fat on it.
It's leaner.
Yes, for sure.
Have you had deer?
I've had deer.
How similar is it to deer?
I felt like the deer I had was better than the horse.
Okay, interesting.
But I also had like a good cut.
Sure.
So of the deer. So it hard to tell. So I was really glad that I got to close the loop on that. But also one thing that Amy and I like to do when we travel is, especially like out of the country, is to go to a lot of grocery stores. Sadly, no Spanish grocery stores. But then again, I'm married, so I shouldn't be going to those Spanish grocery stores. But it's a fun way to just like, pretend to be a local and just experience a different side of the country and also like save money so that way you can spend more when you go out to eat for dinners. So we made it, we tried to make sure that we hit grocery stores in the Netherlands, Germany, France, Switzerland, and Italy while we were traveling. And one of my favorite areas to browse in all of these stores was the soda aisle. And on our
That would be me.
Oh yeah, for sure. And on our first day, I was in a Dutch grocery store and I was greeted by two smiling German men on a bottle label, and it was labeled Fritz-Kola.
Fritz.
Yes. And there were so many other Fritz drinks in the aisle that it was honestly like a pretty large part of the soda section were different Fritz drinks. And as I traveled across, I finally got into Germany and went through the several stores there. One of the things that I learned is that the German soda industry is very unique and very prominent, which I didn't know. They lead Europe in sale and consumption of soda. Obviously, they have a pretty large population that contributes to this, but for the consumption end, like the number 2 and number 3 countries were like very small countries. So it is unique of how much soda they drink, especially for being a country known for drinking beer.
Yeah.
Like you don't associate the Germans with carbonated drinks.
No.
So today I want to tell you about the history of soda in Germany and how that has opened the door for brands like Fritz-Kola to make their mark in society. Germany's history collides with Coke like almost every country at some point.
Yeah.
So they had a Coca-Cola branch subsidiary company thing by the early 1930s, and it was a very popular drink in the 1930s in Germany. And that was partially in part to the leader of that local branch, whose name was Max Kite. And Max Kite did a very good job of disguising that this was an American company. He did a very good job of localizing the business to make it feel like this was a German soda. And that it worked very well. And it was just like, it was very, not as popular as America probably, but like it did very well. And as we get closer to World War II, though, that Max Kite ran into a lot of problems. So first of all, one of Hitler's initiatives from an economic standpoint is that he wanted businesses that were run by foreign countries to nationalize. So he wanted Coca-Cola GmbH to break off from Coca-Cola International, become its own company and like do its own thing and eventually basically be like absorbed by the government because they were trying to grow local industries. So Max doesn't want this to happen. He was more committed to his soda than he was the Nazis. And he did everything in his power to not nationalize their business to the point where he even joined like he got a bureaucratic job in the government that allowed him to be like on a board that would allow him to veto himself getting nationalized.
That's hilarious. Committed.
Yes, absolutely. And to make things worse for him, though, with World War II starting, there was a naval blockade around the German seaports, and there was a trade embargo that prevented the U.S. from trading with Germany. So he was producing 7 of the 9 ingredients, secret ingredients in Coke. They trusted him that much to do that in Germany. But there were 2 they still had to ship back and forth all the time. So eventually, he stockpiled as much as he could, but he knew that if this war kept going on, he's going to run out of ingredients to make Coca-Cola, and he's going to have to come up with a new drink. So Max is a businessman, so he doesn't know how to make soda. So he has to go to his team of scientists and say, I need you to make me a new soda out of some sort of ingredients that we can source while we're in the middle of a war with a trade embargo and a blockade. And what he described the ingredients as were the leftovers of the leftovers.
Yeah.
So the leftover apple pulp from cider making was used. He also would get the whey that was left over from cheese making and combine the whey with the apple pulp. And then he would get beet sugar and any sort of citrus fruit that he could get his hands on from Italy. And he would mix all of those together and make his new soda. And he goes to his marketing team and says, the most important thing about making a soda is the name. We have to have a good name. And you should use your imagination when coming up with a name for this. And the German word that he used for imagination was fantasy. And that got shortened to Fanta.
No way.
Fanta was invented not by the Nazis, but in Nazi Germany. And I would say it was kind of it succeeded in spite of the Nazis in a lot of ways, where this was the drink of the Germans at the time for several years. And it sounds like no one really liked it, but they didn't have any other options.
Yeah.
They would put it in their soup to help flavor their soups, I guess.
Well, honestly, the ingredients that you listed to me does not sound like the Fanta that I drink.
No.
I mean, I those ingredients don't sound like something I'd be jumping all over.
Absolutely. So eventually, the World War II comes to an end, and all communication has even been cut off between Germany and the U.S. For Coke. So Max Kite finally gets to contact Coca-Cola headquarters in Atlanta after the war, and they don't even know what's going on. They haven't heard from this guy in about 5 years.
Sure.
So not only do they find out that, 1, he's alive, 2, the business is still running, he kept the company from getting nationalized, he made a new drink, but also he delivers 5 years worth of profits that he made for them and hands them to him.
This dude is a loyal man.
And they immediately promote him. They're like, you
so.
are great. You're now in control of all European operations. But they also immediately discontinue Fanta. They're like, you did great. Good job. Get rid of this bad drink.
That stuff's gross.
Yes. But they do keep it in their back pocket because about 10 years later, in the 1950s, they decide to resurrect Fanta. And in this time, though, instead of it being used with scraps, they get some better ingredients. And they decided to make it an orange-flavored drink.
Yeah.
And so the Fanta that you might know and love was created back at that point. But it did have its roots in that original, in that World War II hard times drink.
That is crazy.
And in the years following that, in kind of a strange twist, The Germans, they're drinking their Coke again, and they're drinking other colas they make as well. And they're starting to really get an affinity for these orange sodas. And one thing I noticed that's different with like the soda industry over there is that because they have this rich tradition of brewing beer, that a lot of the soda making happens by breweries as opposed to like a company that just handles soda. So a lot of breweries are making their own colas, making their own orange aids, as they might call them.
Sure.
And people in bars start asking for them to be mixed together. And this is often referred to like as a special. And the kind of the shortened German term for this that comes out of this is the Spätzle. So they would go to the bar and they would ask for basically a half Coke, half Fanta. And eventually the breweries started saying, well, we're just going to package them as like an Arnold Palmer already
Right.
like prepackaged together to mix to drink. And the Spätzle starts to absolutely take off to the point where then Coke has to respond. Like Coke needs to have its own Coke and Fanta drink. Pepsi has to have its own Coke and Fanta drink. And this becomes arguably maybe one of the national drinks of Germany. And today we're going to drink one.
No, okay.
So this is a Paulaner Spätzle. So Paulaner is one of the breweries, I think based in Munich area. And there's some weird things with like the legality of if you can call yourself a Spätzle or not. Paulaner actually went to court a couple of years about this and they won this argument. So this is one of the more popular brands. And here, let's open it.
Paulaner.
Yes.
That's a good sound.
All right.
So I'm seeing a can that has yellow, orange, pink, and purple.
Yes.
Is there that many flavors in there?
No.
So is it what's it made of?
Well, so the can is modeled after the sunset setting over the stadium in the Munich Olympics in 1972, I think.
Okay.
My understanding is. But let me pour some. But it is basically Coke plus Fanta.
Coke plus Fanta.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I would do at like a Taco Bell or whatever. I mean, not you don't have, you know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
would make that mixture for sure.
For sure. And we did this in our high school German classes. And because we would have like we're having our German party today. And what we would do is like our teacher would say, bring some Coke, bring some Fanta. And then she would tell us to mix them. And we'd be like, Frau Maury, are you crazy? Why would you do this?
Why?
And we would try it and be like, I don't know about this. But the reason that's weird is because the Fanta that we have in America is completely different than the Fanta in Germany and the rest of the world. So a couple months ago, when we were getting dinner, I got you that
Yes.
Latvian Fanta.
Yes.
How would you describe that Fanta that you drank?
Different colored, first of all. Does not look the same. The bottle's similar, obviously, but I don't know. It's definitely like, I don't want to say the word natural because it's not natural, but it doesn't taste like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's less, I feel less bad about drinking it.
Yes, it has real orange juice in
Yeah.
it. I would describe it as being like a carbonated orange juice versus American Fanta being an orange flavored
An
drink.
orange colored flavored drink. Yeah,
Yes.
it looks more like carbonated orange juice too. Like the
Yes.
color is more natural looking.
Very yellow.
And I don't know that there's not fake. Is there fake color in it? There
I don't
probably
know.
is. I don't
Probably a
know.
little bit.
I don't know.
But I mean, it is like some of these are like 10% juice.
Right.
So like it is significant.
Right.
Yes. So I know it's hard to see the color in these. Some Americans have allegedly called the Spätzle, they've called it like swamp juice or something because of the
Okay.
color.
Well,
which-
it looks, when you, in the cup, it kind of just looks like a cream soda color maybe.
yeah.
But when it came out, it almost looked as if it was orange and Coke. Like, you know what I mean? It
Yes.
was like
lighter,
like almost like tea
for sure.
a little bit.
Well,
But it's fizzy.
let's take a sip.
It's very fizzy. I mean, it's great.
I know. I love it.
It's great.
Yeah. Thank you to Jungle Jim's International Market in Fairfield, Ohio. Amy and I were down that way. And have you heard of Jungle Jim's?
No.
They're this giant international grocery store, and they have just different aisles for different countries. So we just went to the German aisle. And I was hoping to find more stuff there, but we were able to get Spätzles.
I was wondering if you like brought that back with you or how you got that.
Oh, no. Yeah, I got lucky. They do sell them in America as of like a year or two ago, but they're not allowed to call them Spätzle because of
I
that
see.
court thing. So they call it a sunset because of the colors of
Right.
the can. So
So it's really interesting because Like as I drink it, I'm thinking this is Coke and Fanta together. Like it is. It's like, so you remember when Dr. Pepper cream soda came out?
Mm-hmm.
I remember taking a sip of that and thinking I was expecting to be drinking a new soda, but what it tasted like was like I was drinking Dr. Pepper and cream soda. You know what I'm saying? Which is like, that's what it's supposed to be. That's what this is. It's like, it's less Cokey, but it's because there's another soda with it. Like it's good.
Yeah.
And it tastes like I'm drinking orange soda and Coke. But when you smell it, it almost smells like Sprite.
Yeah, you're totally right. I don't know how
it doesn't
that works.
smell like orange or Coke. It smells like Sprite.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
I would describe it as being greater than the sum of its parts. Yeah, like sounds
I
like it
agree.
would be nasty, but pleasantly surprised by
And I love
Spezi.
Coke. You know that. Everyone probably knows that by now. I love Coke, my favorite beverage of all time. If no liquid existed on the face of the planet except one thing, I would pick Coke.
Yeah.
And the fact that this doesn't taste just like Coke isn't disappointing to me. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's very good.
For sure. Yeah, some of the other competitor names that I alluded to, I just wanted to read them because they're funny. So Coke's is called Mezzo Mix,
Okay.
which I was seeing broadcast ads on TV for Mezzo Mix.
Really?
So like Coke puts a lot of money behind marketing
yeah.
this to the Germans. Pepsi's is called Schwip-Schwap.
Okay.
Which
And
is
so
a
these
little-
are popular over there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like everyone has there's like tons of local versions as well. So like,
It's like I'd go pick up a Sprite and a Coke. They're going to go pick up a Coke and then
Yeah.
also this.
I would say every grocery store we were at
Wow.
had some sort of Spezi.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I want to fast forward to the early 2000s, where there were two college students named Lorenz Hampel and Mirko Wiegert, and they decided that they wanted to make a cola better than Coke. They said that Coke had too much sugar, not enough caffeine, and they decided that, you know, we're two college students. We don't know anything about how to make soda. We've never done it before, but we can do better. So we're going to go online. We're going to Google what are the ingredients in cola. And it's funny because this was about 2002, so they may have been asking Jeeves because they did not get any results. They could not get answers.
That'd be a lot harder than it is now.
Oh, absolutely. So they eventually started calling breweries and they said like, hey, can you give us your secret recipe for your colas? And they got a bunch of no's, but eventually they got a yes. And so they took that recipe, they modified it to reduce the sugar, put 3 times as much caffeine as in Coke, and they invented out of their college apartment Fritz-Kola.
Fritz.
Yes. And like they had, you know, they were young guys with a lot of ideals, and because they were really into the partying scene and they wanted a drink that could keep them awake all night when they were out partying, that they would market to people in their demographic.
Sure.
And
Smart.
young people that were around their age. They also targeted bars, and they would make deals with bars where they would give their money back if people didn't purchase the soda after a certain amount of time. And it worked. And they basically have built up this young, like, grassroots following. And I would walk into like a fancy coffee shop, and there would be giant umbrellas outside that would say Fritz-Kola on them.
Wow.
There would be like a neon sign above the bathroom, Fritz-Kola.
Wow.
Just like a branded refrigerator that was stocked full only of Fritz's.
Wow.
And this is like, you know, they, in some of these areas, especially in the north, that they are like seriously competing with Coke. And apparently Pepsi has been going through like a pricing dispute with a lot of the grocery stores. And you can't get Pepsi in several of the main chains over there, to where in the right circles, like Fritz is kind of eating Pepsi's lunch in a way. And it's cool because, so in Germany, I've noticed that the soda landscape is a lot more even maybe than in other places. Obviously, Coke is doing pretty well. I'm not trying to act like Coke is suffering
As it
over
should.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like there are so many options between, you know, like with Fritz and Pepsi, but also Afri-Cola. I guess the cola nut comes from Africa. So there's a German company called Afri-Cola.
It's a good name.
Yeah, there's a Vita Cola, and there's a lot of other colas as well. But despite this, Coke is probably going to always be top dog in Germany. And sometimes I feel like it's easy to feel like a Fritz in a sea of Cokes, where you're the little guy, you've got some cool ideas of what you might want to do in the future, you know, but there's a lot of competition and it can be kind of scary. And sometimes it's easier just to side with, you know, the guy who's been around for a while that's been doing this for so long, survived world wars and stuff.
Right.
But one of the things that I've learned about Fritz-Kola as I've been reading into them more, I can't find a single negative thing that anyone has ever said
Wow.
about these guys. Like, I'm digging through subreddits and going through YouTube comments and things, and everyone says like Fritz is the best.
Wow.
And Amy and I tried them. I had a regular Fritz-Kola. She had a Fritz Limo, which is like a lemonade, and it hit the spot at 5:30 in the morning when we had to pull a really long day, and it kept me awake. And I have said before, probably to you even, I wish that there was a Coke that just had a little bit less sugar. I don't want a diet. I don't want a zero. I just want like 25% less sugar.
I can understand that too. And like, as a person who drinks a lot of Coke still, it's a lot of sugar. And like, whether or not I like it or I don't, because I do like it, I know every one I drink is like, I shouldn't be drinking this.
Yes.
And so if I could know, even if it was like 30 or 40% less, and I could get used to it, you know, it's like, that would be ideal, really.
Absolutely. So I also like that, as I've been reading about Fritz, that they have a lot of ideals, whether it's about sustainability, where some of the things that when they were younger as a company, it was like because they were poor, like they would buy these recycled bottles and they would only do glass bottles. But now they're like, we do glass bottles because we want to recycle them. We want to help the environment. That this is a company where they put a lot of their money towards towards music. They will like sponsor musicians and they'll do like music sessions and things. And I love how 20 years removed that the company, they've stuck to their ideals. They want to make a great soda. And honestly, like, I can't get Fritz-Kola in America. It is extremely hard to get. Not as easy as Spezi. And Coke may be number one in Germany for, forever, but that's okay because I would still rather be drinking a Fritz. Thank you for listening to the Factoid Podcast. If you have a factoid that you want to share with us, send us an email at whatsyours@factoidpodcast.com.
You can find us everywhere you get your podcasts, or you can check out our website, factoidpodcast.com.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.